Hi, Shahieda.
Hi, Naziswa.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell us what your views are on African psychologies?
Oh, that's a very nice question. I like that. I think for me, it's, I don't know. Let me just, I want to give you a practical reflection of what I do rather than tell you, what I think it is. For me, if you want to do African psychology, you must begin with some of the assumptions that is of Africa about what psychology is and who human beings are. So, for instance, one of the things I had interpreted and then constructed my practice around that is what the self is. And for me, in an African context, the self is relational. The self is connected. The self is continuous with everything around it, nature, other people, etc. So I then started to practice a psychology that is consistent with that notion of a self. And interestingly, when I started to read the literature, I saw that in the Far East, the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Japanese and the Chinese, they had that same understanding of the self, where the self starts from the place of there's a spirituality, there's a culture, there's context, So the self is fundamentally connected. Like Prof. Kize, keeps on telling us the self is, essentially connected. So, and then when you go to Latin America and the south of Europe and the whole of Africa, where they call themselves Arabs in the north of Africa, or where they're Africans in the south, we see the self as connected to others. So what I would really like to go out there, if we want to begin to indigenize and to Africanize psychology, we must just start with shifting from a separate self that we've inherited, from modern Western psychology. We must just go back to that the self is relational. Then we will be African psychologists.
Okay, so in your view, African psychology is indigenization and Africanizing. Is that what I heard you say?
What does it mean to indigenize? I think that's the question that when you indigenize, it must speak to, I like your concept of this morning of culture is time and space. So whatever we do must be consistent with time and space in that moment, So if I start imposing concepts that does not speak to a time and space of where that client is, then that's not indigenous. You get what I'm saying? So I think indigenizing is when we make it consistent with time and space. I hope that sounds good.
Thank you, Shahieda. You are clever. Thanks.